Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm very excited this week to be talking to the rather wonderful Mr. Dennis Ward. You may know Dennis as a producer, engineer, mixer, and bass player of a lot of rather wonderful rock and heavy rock and metal music. He was a founding member of Pink Cream 69, which I'm sure many of you know if you're that into heavy rock. But as a producer, engineer, and mixer, he's worked with everybody. Magnum is one of his latest endeavors. Halloween, I'm sure you all know. He did their Skyfall record, and there's tons and tons of stuff for us to ask about. So without further ado, let's bring Dennis on. Dennis, how the devil are you?
I'm doing quite well, thank you very much.
This might confuse people because you are based in Germany, but you're American.
Yes, I am indeed, yeah.
When did you venture over to Germany? Well, how old were you when you went there?
Very young, 13. My father was working for the military as a civilian. I finished high school in Würzburg, and I stayed around because it was the mid-80s, and the mid-80s in Germany, and the live scene here, the military scene was amazing. I was playing all the time. I mean, all the time. And I did that for 3 years until I just burnt out, and then I joined Pink Cream 69 or came into the band.
So Pink Cream 69 is quite legendary. The two albums I know, of course, are the Self-Titled and Food for Thought. First of all, I must ask you, where the heck did you come up with the name Pink Cream 69?
I have to admit, I wasn't involved in that. I have to explain first that I joined the band like literally right at the beginning. They had a temporary bass player, someone that just helped out while they were looking, so they could play a couple of gigs. I joined the band. The band got too established too quickly, so they had to keep the name. The name was literally like, shit, we need a name. We got a gig next week. We need something. And apparently the singer, Andy, was at a cafe, and it was like a cocktail lounge. And he picked up a card, and there was a drink called Pink Cream 69. So he says, that's our name. Put it on the poster. And that was it. Means nothing. And then we got stuck with it,
What was the transition then from being a bass player, a band member, to becoming a producer, an engineer, and a mixer? How did that work?
I enjoyed the technical side. I was a bit of a nerd. My father was an electronic engineer, and he fixed everything. And he had 4-track machines in his, in his lounge at home. He had surround speakers, and he loved high quality music. I got turned on, of course, and I loved it too. So being a musician, of course, you want to record your own stuff. You buy 4 tracks, you buy 8 tracks, you start fiddling around. I did it more than anyone else in the band, and I got pretty good at it. Then you start helping your buddies, you know how it goes. And then everybody tells other people about you. Then you start working in studios. And then there I was. I started working in studios. I actually thought I liked the side of producing very much. I like working with bands, working on their songs, trying to get the best out of it. But the engineering side was really not my thing, to be totally honest. I almost had I wanted to be that guy that sat in the back, did this, drank coffee, and complained. In the beginning, I was just tracking. I would just track and produce. Somebody else would mix it. Of course, budgets got smaller. And
I understand to this point entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not getting bigger; they're still getting smaller. So I was kind of forced into it, And then one thing led to another, and then here I am.
I always thought, as a musician and having made so many albums, the producer was always the person that annoyed me the most, because I came in with loads and loads of ideas, and quite often, especially when I worked with some of the bigger ones, they didn't say very much, and they were always kind of sitting at the back nodding and all that kind of good stuff, or not there. And I got on really well with the engineers. So for me, I loved the engineering side, and I still to this day believe that being a great engineer, being a really good musician, being a good songwriter, whatever it might be, is all a great qualifications for being a great producer.
And I had the exact same feeling, especially when I was younger. I really disliked producers. I thought they just were there to ruin your music. As an artist, I was insulted by them more than I enjoyed working with them. And it was the same thing. They would leave to go have their coffee or dinner, and I'd be like, great, sit with the engineer. Now I can make some real music and enjoy myself. And that's how I saw things. However, I also realized very early in the game that I enjoy going one-on-one with musicians, but I didn't want to see myself as a producer that sat in the back, drank his coffee, got his Coke and his hookers and screwed off. I wanted to be the guy with like chummy and, helping all these people make music, but it didn't turn out that way. Then I turned into a complete nerd.
Looking at your resume, you're making several records a year. You're busy. especially like the early 2000s, you were killing it. You were just working all the time from what I can tell. I'm looking at obviously albums here where you're producing, you're engineering, often you're playing bass on it as well. And you're also touring and playing shows as a bass player. Is that out of necessity because you just need to be busy and working and making money? Or are you making conscious choices of like, you know what, I just want to go on the road. I want to get away from this.
Well, in the early 2000s, when I was doing a lot, I just missed it. I just realized I thought I could go away from it. I thought I could leave it completely. I was almost not interested anymore. And there was a time between 2006 and 2009, 10, where I was really just kind of just abandoned it, to be honest. And then I got the itch again, and then I started making a new project, and then we went on the road, and it was doing great. And then I thought, okay, I got to keep finding bands and start doing stuff and play live. And I still feel it now, as a matter of fact. I'm still doing it now because of that. I need that outlet as well.
How's your production changed? I mean, back in 2000, 2001, what was your system then? What were you recording on?
Budgets, the way things happen. I started using Alesis in a couple of studios, you know, these ADATs, and hated it. And then I was using the Tascam DA88s. Yeah. And that was kind of neat. You could stack them up and get a lot of tracks. And then in 1996, I was working at a studio. They had a Soundscape 8-track recorder player that worked on Windows 3.1. Remember that? It had 2 inputs, 4 outputs.
Yeah.
And when they showed, you couldn't even crossfade, you know, to do a crossfade, you'd have to stack tracks and do a fade in. Horrible. And by 2000, this whole system got updated. It was bought by SSL, by the way. First, it belonged to Mackie, and then SSL bought it. And it was a 32-track unit, you know, and I bought 2 of these things. So I had 64 tracks. I was rolling. I mean, back then, 64 tracks was amazing. I stayed analog. I think my first complete digital mix was like 2006, 2007. That was my very first all in the box mix. I actually started on Pro Tools shortly after. I always use Cubase as well, just because I love Cubase for MIDI, because I was a songwriter too, and it was just, for me, a great tool. I ended up staying more with Cubase because it seemed to do more what I needed it to do at the time. And that's where I'm at now.
The bit that resonated with me earlier a lot was the budget thing. And I suppose I come at it from a slightly different angle. So I used to relish going from one album to another. And then I would hand off the stuff to get mixed. What started to happen is the budget was X number of £1,000, dollars, whatever, and euros. And then I was paying the same, sometimes more, to a mixer to mix an album in a week that I had just spent 3, 4, 5, or 6 weeks making. And I started waking up one day and going, I've got to force myself to mix my albums, mix my EPs, my singles, because I'm just paying far too much money out of the budget for somebody else to do it. So that was my economic thing.
I got asked to do mixing very, very early. I actually enjoyed the mixing part very, very, very much. I'm kind of spoiled. I actually, you know, like I started on like an Amec Angela, and went to Hendrix and Mozart, and then the German company ADT. It's like the German version of an SSL. Then I was on SSLs. That's all I've ever done, you know. I've never done like the little mixing board, you know, or cut tapes and no automation. I was never there. I was always with lots of stuff and big stuff. One of my first real productions was with my band Pink Cream 69, the Food for Thought. And this album, I was just there tracking and producing. And I worked with the engineer, the house engineer, to mix it. We worked on it together, but he was the main guy. He was turning all the knobs, you know. And I was kind of content with the record, but not 100%.
Right.
And afterwards, I said, I got to try this myself. We did a record before in LA a few years before, and it was mixed by Shea Baby, and we were not happy with that record at all. And the next one was a little bit better. And I was like, I gotta try this myself. This isn't working for me. And I did, and that record turned out to be one of our most successful records. And then I said, okay, I'm all in. I'm going to work on it more. The studio I was helping, or I was working at, let me play all the time. They let me do whatever I wanted. When there was free time, I could just mix crap just for fun. And I took full advantage of that. And I just tried stuff. I came to the point where I also realized, wow, my productions are way cheaper. And the advantage I took was like with my own music, I can record for a really long time, which I really enjoy, you know. There's none of this stuff here, you know. Or when you're doing an analog mix, a song a day, it's got to be done. And there was no sending emails around, hey, do you like this? Should I change anything? It's like, this is it. I'm done, you know, there's no going back. And then it goes to mastering. Maybe I did a vocal up, vocal down. That was it, you know. But mastering was another thing. Mastering is something I didn't touch for a long time. And then I actually ended up doing a record that got mastered at Sterling Sound that cost us about 6,000 US dollars. And I was like, wait a minute, I just mixed the record for less than that. That's
6,000 to master an album.
Oh, the budget was there as well back then. You know, we could just do it. And it wasn't like a big deal for me. I didn't feel like I was losing anything. I just always thought, I'm doing the wrong job. Definitely might want to consider starting mastering. But I got to admit, I'm not a big fan. I master stuff, and it's not my thing. I do it. I can do it well, I think. Right. But I don't get a kick out of it, if you know what I mean.
I always felt like coming up as a musician, songwriter guy, and then learning how to engineer and record my own music, which obviously I was producing from the get-go, I just didn't realize it. Learning to do those things, I always found like every part of the process, I was trying to do my very best work. So a good illustration of that is a few years ago, before I started any of this online stuff, about 10 years ago, I went and gave a talk on the second Fray record, because it was still pretty fresh and successful at the time. So people were interested enough to know. And so I brought the multi-tracks, I set them up on a laptop, and I put them through whatever the speaker system they had at AES. And I had a rough mix, meaning volume only and panning, and played it back. And I loved it. And then we listened to the final mix, and we're like, yeah, the final mix sounds a little too heavily EQ'd. It's a little smaller sounding. It's very squashed and blah, blah, all of these kind of comments. And I'm thinking to myself, well, yes, because when I recorded that, I compressed things on the way in, I EQ'd on the way in, and I wanted it to sound great on the console.
If you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's really dangerous stuff, because yes, I know. I also, about a year ago, I had to like pull off my old soundscapes, some backups from 2001. These were recorded at 16-bit, 44.1. Same thing. I turned up the faders and went, why does it sound so much better than some stuff I'm doing now? I was working in a great studio, a proper studio with great mics. I was doing things that I felt the track needed. I was treating things the way I thought it needed beforehand. These days, and let's be honest, everybody's recording on their 8 in, 8 out device. Everything's flat and linear as hell. There's no mojo on it. And it's up to you to give it any sparkle of life. And what do people end up doing? They process the holy crap out of everything. Everything I listen to these days sounds processed to death. And vocals right now, I don't know what to think. Sometimes vocals are just plastic. That's the only way I could put it. But
no,
yes, I know exactly where you're coming from, and it is annoying. And I have to admit, I've turned down recently, the last few years, many jobs because I turned the faders up, and I'm so annoyed. I just don't want to. I don't want to get. I just can't. I just can't. I can't.
Well, we don't want to tell too many people that. They might get afraid to send you their tracks.
No, don't be afraid. Listening never hurts. Sometimes the song is so good. I've done jobs where I was like, hey, I like this music so much, I'm going to make this work. I don't care what it takes, But it's just the comparison of like, even my buddies, they'd send me stuff to mix, and it was just, I just turned the faders up and I had a song already. I was ready to go. Now it was just here and there doing stuff and using my own taste. And that was it. That was done. And now I'm rescuing.
Exactly the same way. Late 90s, early 2000s, I listened to those early things that I was doing on Pro Tools, and everything is committed. Everything sounds like the biggest, fattest tone I could get at the time. And that's the way I thought about it all the time. I remember like double compressing things, but not aggressively, but the same way, if not better than I would on a mix. So I would have like light 2 or 3 to 1 compression, and then maybe a 20 to 1 afterwards, limiter just catching the odd peak.
Yeah.
And I pull up those acoustic guitar parts, and they sound massive and lush. And I high passed some of the low end out of the way. And I spent ages working on the position on the mic to get it just be right. And I listen to that and I go, wow, those are some of the best things I've ever recorded.
Yes, yes. And I find that a lot of the younger engineers they're kind of shy about doing stuff. They're very careful about it, and okay, or they don't have the possibilities. Let's be honest. You have your 8-channel bearing or whatever. You probably don't even have an EQ or something that you can use, or if you do turn it on, you've got latency enough to shift it off so that it's out of phase, and then you're screwed anyway. So you're kind of left there to record linear, if that's if really no other way to put it. You got to do it this way. And the guy that gets it, please make this cool,
This is the main reason why we call the channel and everything we do produce like a pro and not mix the mix of the mix. Because everything was about mixing. Even when we started this channel 8 years ago, still to this day, all the new channels that are springing up are all about mixing. Everything is about a DI and a virtual instrument. Not everything, but so much is.
So much is. I seldom get questions like, how can I track this to do that? It's usually the question would almost always be, what would you do with this in a mix? Sometimes I would answer, because I do clinics still, some live stuff at the school over here, and they'll ask me something, and I'll say, well, if it's that bad, I'll do it again. I'm not going to try to save stuff. Think about the time you're wasting. You could either sit there for 2 days turning knobs trying to get something out of it, or you can just do it right, do it again. It's much quicker. Same thing with auto tuning. Sometimes I don't get it. Sing it. When I see some of these guys sitting there hours fixing stuff, I'm wondering, maybe they could just do that one part again. It was all fine, just that one spot. We just do it. He's standing right there. Just hit record. Yep. It's a different way of thinking these days. I don't know.
Well, I think necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it? Here we are in a situation where we want the best, we want great results. But if you're not all in a room working off each other, like challenging each other, which is what, most records, the average record I made in the mid-late 90s through probably till 2011, 12 was 6 weeks. That was an average album, like six weeks to record.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's a lot of time to get really invested in your art, really a lot of time to work off each other, for the bass player and the drummer to work on some parts together. We used to record all the basic tracks, and then you'd come in and listen, and the bass player, I remember playing bass on many albums and being like, I've got to lay back on this part, I'm getting ahead of you, and I need to push a little bit harder here, and on that fill it's kind of rushed, but I like how exciting it is, so I have to kind of drive with you. There wasn't that sort of idea of well, once the drums are edited, then I'll put the bass down. It was the interaction between the drummer and the bass player, for instance. But that was true of everything. Everybody had a role. The rhythm guitar player, whoever was playing rhythm guitar, had to play well enough to inspire the bass player and drummer.
Yes, that was the thing. I mean, when I started with our producer, I got to give him credit in the early days, the end of the 80s, when I actually started recording. He insisted that we play to a click track, which was fine. I didn't know any different, so I thought it was no big deal. But he insisted that we all play together and that we do all the basic tracking together, but it doesn't mean we're going to keep it. It's just to check stuff out, and everybody gets to go home with a little cassette tape and have a listen and think about stuff and come back the next day. Let's talk about it, And it was just a great way to work. I mean, you can still do that today. There's nothing wrong with it, but it was just normal. It was absolutely standard and enjoyable.
A couple of things. We have a video up on the channel. People are gonna start seeing you on our channel, which is wonderful. There's a Tonex video we're gonna put up. I haven't yet tried it, and I don't even know if they've sent it to me yet. Maybe they did, Eric, and it's sitting over there, and I don't realize it.
I bought it. I bought it.
You bought it?
When I heard it was coming out, I wanted this so badly. I've been playing with a laptop or with a Mac Mini for years. I've been playing with plug-in setups. And when I heard that, I didn't want to have the Kemper because, to be honest, it's too big. It's too damn big to carry on a plane, And when I heard about that thing, I just bought it. I bought everything to it. And I started just turning on every amp I got, and I just started capturing everything I got. And I just love it to death. I'm a complete fanboy. Totally.
You've done a course with Christian in Kohle Audio Kult. What can you tell me about that?
Well, it's a song that I recorded with Firewind, the band Firewind, featuring Gus G, the ex-guitar player of Ozzy Osbourne. I was actually involved in this record, not only as a producer, recorder, mixer, master, or whatever. I was also a songwriter. So Gus and I have been bouncing ideas off each other for many years. I play bass in Gus's solo band sometimes. I'm also Gus's singer in his solo band sometimes. So I'm all over the
You
map.
are a man of many talents, my friend.
I'm a cheap replacement. No, but we've been working together for years. We actually, right before he joined Ozzy, we were going to try to make a band. We are going to try to make a project together. And we realized really early that we work well together and we bounce ideas off each other really well. So I helped him write this record. He wanted a concept record, and I enjoy writing lyrics a lot too. So I helped him with melody and lyrics and some little bit of arrangement stuff. And this song was recorded, let's see, I think it was 2015 when we did the recordings. I had mixed it on a hybrid situation. I used to have a lot more outboard gear, a summing mixer, lots of, stuff, just lots of stuff. And
I hear you.
I had to basically remix it and try to get it as close to the point as possible. I think I got it pretty close, and I'm pretty content with it. And I'm going through every step of the recording, every step of the mixing, every track. I'm showing every plugin. I'm showing every bit of routing we're doing. Every trick, every side chain, all the way through from beginning to the end. And we're including, of course, all the multi-tracks and the complete Cubase session. Hope that people will have a lot of fun with this and enjoy it.
Obviously, Christian's a giant. I love what he does. We're very excited to be partnering up with him. Excited for the video content and everything you're going to do for us as well, my friend.
Cheers. I'm looking very forward to it too.
Well, thanks ever so much. There is going to be a link down below to Dennis's course with Christian. So check out the link down below. And once again, Dennis, thank you ever so much. Look forward to seeing you more on the channel. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, everyone. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, goodbye.